Lots of people publish their own writing. An industry called the vanity press exists to serve them. Books are printed, perhaps some are distributed, few people read them, and the author amasses more costs than acclaim. Walt Whitman self-published Leaves of Grass, and then wrote glowing reviews of his book under assumed names, of course. I recently wrote a little about Pat Conroy, who sold many millions of books and self-published his first. On her 33rd birthday, over tea, Virginia Woolf and her husband Leonard hatched some plans. They agreed to buy a home, Hogarth2, and then purchase a press so that they might print books, and acquire a bulldog pup, which they would name John. There is no record of the dog, but they did buy the home, and in it, starting in 1917, they began to publish books on what they named the Hogarth Press. The first book they published consisted of a story by Leonard and a story by Virginia. Over the years into the 1940s, Hogarth Press published something like 527 books. Virginia stopped her work and sold her part in the venture in 1938, after it was well established. At its inception, she played a key part in the operation. From the age of 19, she was an accomplished bookbinder, and because her husband suffered from a medical condition that affected his hands, she had to set all the type, every single letter of every word, including the appropriate spacing. Far from being discouraged by this tedious task, she found it exciting, soothing, ennobling, and satisfying. Typesetting was a way of creating an astonishing product, a book, out of what seemed at first to be a knittering bit of piecework. Their first attempts were a bit sloppy, but they rapidly transformed from self-taught amateur printers into professional publishers. T.S. Eliot told them that their copy of The Wasteland was his favorite. Moreover, it is thought that the practice of typesetting affected, or should I say influenced, the way Virginia wrote. The careful arrangement of words into sentences and sentences into paragraphs. It's the same process in the composition of type as it is with a pen on paper. Similarly, writing fiction is a way of creating an orderly world, refined and profound, even in its daily, what might appear to be dreary, details. The press also permitted Virginia to publish her own work, exactly as she wanted it, without the aid or interference of editors and publishers, who almost certainly would have been male. I am the only woman in England, she wrote, free to write what I like. To the Lighthouse, Mrs. Dalloway, The Waves, Orlando, even A Room of One's Own, all of these were published by the Hogarth Press and set into type letter by Virginia. It's possible that she might not have written the books without the press, or if she had written them, that she might have been forced into changes and compromises by a publisher less amenable to her work than herself. It's nothing but a speculation, but when I consider it, I find the press not a little side flirtation, but something absolutely intrinsic to the novels. Leonard was also grateful for the work because he thought it gave her an escape from the challenges of her writing, as well as the regular backdrop of the bad news in the world. She, of course, eventually ended her life in 1941 by loading up her pockets with stones and walking into a river. Another reason for the press, according to Leonard, was that he wanted to publish books that were read, not merely looked at. He and Virginia were interested in publishing work that might be overlooked by the larger presses. They also published books by people they knew, Eliot, E.M. Forster, Catherine Mansfield, Roger Fry, Clive Bell, and Vita Sackville West. One more benefit Virginia obtained from the venture was that it gave her the recurring opportunity to work with her sister, Vanessa, who was a painter. Virginia would typeset the books, Leonard would run the press, Vanessa would design the covers, and Virginia would bind them. When I think of Virginia Woolf, it's not as a book publisher, but she certainly was, and a hands-on publisher at that. We are now supporting ourselves entirely by the Hogarth press, she wrote, which, when I remember how we bought 5 pounds of type and knelt on the drawing room floor 5 years ago, setting up little stories and running out of quads, makes my heart burst with pride.